In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to make Nigerian wedding cake, aka fruit cake. So this cake is a margarine slash butter based pound cake. Let's go through the ingredients. First, we have golden syrup. Then we have some browning, and this is molasses, aka black treacle. I'm going to be using margarine, 250 grams. All the measurements are in the description box below. I'm going to be using a wooden spatula to mix the cake. If you have a hand mixer or stand mixer, you can use that. So I'm going to measure some sugar and pour it to a bowl. Note that that was not exactly a cup of sugar because I wanted it less sweet. So I'm going to transfer the margarine into the mixing bowl. After that, I'm going to prep the pan. I'm using parchment paper and I'm going to line it with some margarine first before using parchment paper. Now you can use margarine and flour to line your baking pan, but I wanted the cake to come out clean, like without all those white residue you get from using margarine and flour to line your pan. So I'm going to use parchment paper for this one. Parchment. I'm shaping the parchment paper using the pan so I can trim off the excess parts. After getting the shape of the pan on the parchment paper, I'm going to smoothen out the edges. When you trim your parchment paper like this, it prevents fold from happening. Like sometimes your parchment paper can get folded into the cake and distort the shape of the cake. I want the cake to come out with a clean finish, so I trimmed the excess paper off. Now I'm just going to take my sachet of margarine. It still has some margarine on it, so I'm just going to take that. I'm just going to take that and apply it all over the pan. I'm going to line the pan with my trimmed parchment paper. Parchment paper is also called baking paper in case you want to get it at a baking store. Next, we're going to do is measure out our dry ingredients. So I'm going to sift some flour and baking powder. Now, on a norm, you are not supposed to use your hand to press down on the sieve. Um, I did that because the baking powder I was using was starting to get was starting to form clumps. So I used my hand to smoothen it out a bit. Next thing I did was to sift in some corn starch. I like adding cornstarch to my cakes to improve the texture. Next, I'm going to add is this spice mix that changed my baking game for me. It has the main ingredients of nutmeg, it has cinnamon in it, it has cardamom, it has a lot of ingredients. Basically, the spice combines aromatic spices that make your pastry or your food smell really good. I use it to cook, I use it to bake. So any ingredients, any pastry that calls for an ingredient like nutmeg or cinnamon, I always add that mixed spice to elevate the flavor and the aroma. Next thing I'm going to do is to beat 3 eggs in a bowl. And I'm going to cream the margarine and sugar together until it turns to a pale yellow. Now for this cake is going to turn out very springy and crumbly even if you don't beat the margarine and sugar for long. That's why I love this cake. The molasses and the black treacle really helps to give the cake a nice texture without having to overbeat your margarine and sugar. So I'm going to add the browning. As you can see, browning is very thick a substance, so it's going to take a while for it to flow out. That's one of the reasons why I don't measure it with a measuring spoon. I just eyeball it because getting the entire thing out of a measuring spoon is always quite hectic. So I just pour it. Then I'm adding a tablespoon of golden syrup. Next thing I'm going to add is molasses. The leftover molasses I had was just about a tablespoon, so I just scooped that into the batter. Now I'm going to stir to combine. At this point, if you have some browning or some rum, you can add that. For this recipe, I would add a quarter cup of rum or brandy to help preserve it and improve the flavor. This cake was going to be consumed in a couple of days, and I did not have any rum at home. So I'm going to stir that. I made sure to scrape down the spatula from time to time to make sure everything combines properly. Next thing I'm going to do is to add a third of the egg I beat earlier. Then I'm going to scrape down the spatula, and then I added a third of the flour. I added it off camera. So I added a third of the flour and I used the cut and fold method to combine it. Now by cutting and folding, I'm trying to avoid over mixing the batter. One thing about butter or margarine recipe is that if you over mix it, you're going to end up with a dense paste. I mixed the egg and flour in three parts. So flour, egg, flour, egg, flour, egg. I'm going to do this until I've totally combined all the eggs and all the flour. I'm going to transfer the batter to the prepped pan. I smoothened the top of the batter, then I slammed it a bit to get rid of any air pockets that may have occurred when I was transferring the batter into the pan. Then I baked this until the cake was ready. This is how the cake turned out. I'm going to wrap it in some clingy film so that it retains moisture as it cools. So I'm going to slice the cake and freeze it because frozen cake is just way better than lukewarm cake. So this is how the cake turned out. The cake was very crumbly and that layer on top is the sweetest and moist part of the cake. We've made it to the end of the video. Thanks for watching. See you next time.